Welcome back to the Nerd Cave. My name's Sean Tabor, and my co-host, as always, Prudence, and you're back for another episode of the Weekly Dispatch. Weekly Dispatch, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, is a YouTube web series based on Dynamics 365 and features and functions of that application, or the platform rather, as it pertains to customer service, field service, and project service automation. It's also a podcast on the CRM Audio Network. So, however you're joining us, whether on the YouTube channel or on the podcast, welcome. Now, last week we talked about the product catalog, and we walked through what a product is, what units and unit groups were, and a little bit about product properties. This week, we're going to talk about price lists and pricing in general, as well as discount lists. So it should be an interesting conversation. With price lists, I have found in most implementations, most customers don't want to really get into the weeds with price lists unless we have integration from their ERP. Now, why would that be? Well, really maintenance. If we have integration from the ERP, then those price lists and that pricing information is just being shot right into Dynamics 365 for customer engagement from their ERP system. If it isn't, then that's something that has to be maintained by the system administrator or by a business user, which, depending on how complex your pricing structure is, your pricing model, that could be a lot of work. So we're going to talk a little bit about what a price list is, what price list items are, how do we get to pricing, what are the different types of pricing models in Dynamics 365 customer engagement, what do they mean, and how best to implement a pricing model. So let's get started. So let's start by taking a look at what exactly is a price list and why do we use it. Price lists essentially define how you charge your customers for your products and services. It defines your pricing. It says to your sales staff or essentially your supply chain. It's defining the pricing that it's going out the door to your customer for that product or service. Now, with the price list, as it's defining the price, you can have multiple pricing structures for different purposes or for different customers. And we're going to have an example here in a minute. So, what does that do for you? It gives you flexibility in your opportunity process, in your sales process, and in your support process. Now, I have had implementations where companies have had regional pricing for their products and services, and price lists can be associated to territories to take care of that. Now, when you're setting up a price list, you have essentially five different attributes. The name of the price list, so that you can find it in the lookup. The start and end date. You don't have to necessarily define a start and end date, but I have found some customers in the manufacturing side define these start and end dates based on product runs or versioning. So they may have, or for sales terms, you may have a price list that's only good for a certain amount of time. Start and end date allows you to define that. Currency. Currency is important because if you're a global, if you have a global customer base, you could support multiple currencies. In North America, you could support the US dollar, Canadian dollar, and the Mexican peso, I think. If I'm wrong on that, forgive me. But I've also had implementations where you need to support global currencies such as the EU or the British pound. If you do support multiple currencies, you have to make sure that you have at least one price list set up per currency. Now let's go to that example I was mentioning before. So really, price lists can be impacted by a number of things, as we mentioned. Geography, relationship with a customer, start and end dates, a number of things. In my experience, I have seen price lists used from one price list, which is a standard default price list that houses everything and anything, doesn't matter what it is, because the prices are defined and derived from ERP, such as finance and operations, and that information is being pumped into customer engagement through an integration. I've also seen some complex pricing setups where it does include geography, it does include discount lists, and it does include multiple layers and levels based on the tier, the product line, the quantity, etc. So let's talk a little bit about in real world terms. We are enunciate some ways you might see a price list in real life. And as if you're familiar with the last episode, I like to use Funko Pops as examples. So that being said, here's my Funko Pop. We talked about this last week. This is my Darth Vader red chrome Funko Pop, exclusive to Target Red Card customers. If you're listening on the podcast, there's also a video component of this. So after the podcast, pop on over to the YouTube channel. Links in the show notes, and you'll be able to see this wondrous Funko Pop that I'm talking about right now. But so Funko Pop could have a price list specifically for Target. It could very well be combined with a discount list for volume, which we're going to talk about discount lists in a minute. But this is an example of, with a Target exclusive, we could have special pricing specifically for Target as opposed to pricing for another store like Walmart. Another example of using Funko Pops, if you're looking at like a common pop that's available at any store, that could have different pricing based on the retailer. So, for example, this Ray Pop is common. You can buy it at any Funko store or any place where they sell Funko Pops. This one's from Force Awakens, so you may not find this anymore, but that's beside the point. So this is a common. This could be available anywhere. The price is typically between $8.99, $10.99, $11.99, right? In that range. So if Funko was using Dynamics 365, they could have different price lists for big box stores that buy a lot, as opposed to comic book stores that may buy, a couple cases, right? So that's another example of how you could use and leverage a price list. We're going to talk about in a future episode how when you're combining field service and or project service to Dynamics 365 customer engagement, there's additional features and functions of price lists that will enhance your pricing capabilities, not only for products but for services. With the field service and project service, you're adding a component, a unit type. Remember units from last week of time. So we'll talk about that in a future episode. But that hopefully that gives you an idea of why you would want to use price lists in your implementation, as opposed to just using a default price list one for all. Like I said, I've seen that done. It fits in some situations, but not all. So let's talk a little bit about pricing hierarchy. Dynamics 365 customer engagement does actually have a pricing hierarchy. Each product can be tied to multiple price lists, as we mentioned before in the example where territory is important. Each sales rep could have their own territory price lists related to the same products across the country. Price list items, as we mentioned before, are what specify the pricing for each price list for each product. So with let's say a Funko Pop that we mentioned before, that red chrome Darth Vader Funko Pop, different Target stores could have different prices theoretically based on area. If so, then they would have different price lists. Each price list item can also have a discount list associated to it. So we're going to talk about discount lists a little more in a minute. But the discount list specifies the discounts available for that price list item. If there's no discount available for the item, then there's no discount list associated. In terms of price list items, and I think I've said this 3 times now because I'm trying to drive that point home, I guess. As we mentioned, price list items define how much customers pay for goods and services. It really is that simple. The product rolls up to a price list, and the price list has price list items related to that product. Products and units have to be there before you can create a price list item. Otherwise, the system does not know what product you're relating it to and what unit or unit group is associated to that price list item. For example, if you have a different price list item for a case of Funko Pop as opposed to a single Funko Pop, you have to have that information in the system, the product and the unit and unit group. Now, in terms of pricing methods, this is something that has really been an eye-opener for me on a recent project. In most projects, the pricing method used is essentially the currency amount. Now, the currency amount, if you're using that as a pricing method, you're simply keying in the price or the amount of that price list item. So if you have a Funko Pop and according to that price list, it's going to be $11.99. You type in $11.99 and you're done. But there's other pricing methods that aren't always used in every implementation, but I want to talk a little bit about them so you understand them. So percent of list is another one. You're going to use this to calculate the product's price in the price list as a percentage of the list price of the associated product. So you're deriving the price as opposed to defining the price. This is also how pricing is handled with percent markup current cost. So you can have costs entered into your price list items, manually entered in customer engagement, or you could have them imported in through integration to your ERP, such as finance and operations. And you have a concept of current and standard cost. as things change in your company, your costing could change. So, for example, um, it, I have a friend who runs a company, and his costs were impacted by recent tariffs. So that would have a impact on the current cost. Standard cost could stay the same, but current cost, because that tariff is not a infinite impact to his costing, would impact the current cost. So percent markup, current cost, you're taking the cost that you define, you're adding a percent markup. Say you want to have a 20% markup on all costs. You add that on top of the current cost. That gives you your price definition. As current cost changes, your price will also adjust as well. Percent markup, standard cost, same concept, just different cost area within the price list item. There's two different fields, current cost and standard cost. Percent margin current cost and percent margin standard cost, similar concepts to the percent markup, except this is modifying the price to ensure a percentage margin of profit. So for percent margin current cost, you're going to use that to derive a price offered in the price list to yield a percentage margin of the current cost of that product. So for example, if your cost is $100 and you want to maintain a 20% margin, your price is going to be $120. And that would be derived either off current cost or standard cost, depending on which pricing method you select. I've seen where customers want to manipulate the margin within a particular opportunity or a particular quote, and this can be done with some configuration within Dynamics 365 customer engagement. But at a price list level, you can define a specific percentage. So for percent margin or percent markup, when you create that price list item and use that pricing method, you have to define the percentage right then and there. It's not an adjustable percentage. Okay? Hope that makes some sense. It gets a little tricky when you're trying to do the different pricing, and pricing is not a simplified process. Typically, like I said, in most implementations, I've seen them use currency amount, but depending on your industry, whether it's manufacturing, if it's a service industry, if you're a heavy margin focused company, then different pricing methods may be appropriate. Discount lists allow a user in Dynamics 365 customer engagement to provide a specified discount to a customer on a product or service. Now, the types of discounts that you can provide are either a flat percentage or a flat amount. And if you're choosing the fixed amount discount, you have to include the currency. Because, of course, if I say it is $20, depending on whether that's US dollar or Canadian dollar, that has an impact to that particular opportunity, quote, or order that we're dealing with in Dynamics 365. Now, discount lists also manage the ability to provide volume discounts. We talked about the Red Chrome Darth Vader Funko Pop a few minutes ago, and how that was an exclusive to Target. So, in that example, thousands of those Red Chrome Funko Pop Darth Vader pops were sold to Target and offered as a exclusive, and no other vendor got that pop. So, using the theory that they had a discount list, Funko probably sold those pops to Target at a discount because they bought a sizable volume. within Dynamics 365 customer engagement, you can define a tiered volume discount simply by indicating the starting and ending quantity of purchase and an associated discount related to it. So, for example, let's say from 0 to 5,000 pops, they got a 10% discount. If they go from 5,001 to 10,000, they get a 20% discount, and so on. So that's how you would handle volume discounts within Dynamics 365 customer engagement using either percentage or a flat amount. As you can see, we're now in Dynamics 365 Sales Hub. To access the area for price lists, discount lists, and price list items, we're going to navigate to App Settings. And then first, let's go to Discount Lists. You can see I've started a discount list for the volume discount for Target related to the Red Chrome Darth Vader Pops. For a discount list, you enter the name and the type. And again, as we discussed earlier, it can either be a flat amount or a flat percentage. To add the discounts and the volume tiers, go to Related and then Discounts. Now we're at the discount screen. I'm going to add a new discount and say that my begin quantity is 0. Or I'm sorry, you can't say 0. Begin quantity is 1, end quantity 2,000. They get a 5% discount. And I'm going to add a new discount at 2001 to 5,000. They get a 10% discount. And at a 5,001 on, they get a 20% discount. So you can see now I have from 1 to 2,000, 2001 to 5,000, and 5,001 to 999 million. And I have my discount tiers for volume discounts, 5, 10, and 20. My discount list is now activated. Now let's go to price lists. You can see I have two price lists. One, the default, which has no price list items and is set to the US currency and has no start date, meaning it's always available. I've added this additional price list for the Funko price list for Target, again set in US currency, and has a start date of 8/25/2019 to 8/25/2020. Let's take a look at the different areas. Under the price list, I have price list items, territory relationships, and related. Under price list items, I have one price list item currently, and that's the Darth Vader Red Chrome Pop. When I click on that product, I can look at the additional details and see the price list item. So this price list item, if I drill into it, you can see that there is no discount list applied currently, and it is set for US dollar. The pricing information, the methods chosen was currency amount, and again, as we discussed, with currency amount, you're setting the amount right away, whereas if I chose one of the other amounts, or one of the other pricing methods, percent of list, that's a percentage of the list price. Percent markup current cost, that's a percentage markup of the current cost. So it would always be based on the current cost and marked up from there. Percent margin, that would be marking up the current cost to achieve a certain margin level. for profit, and the same for standard costs. You also have the ability to define a rounding policy, and when you do that, you're also going to open up options for your rounding option and rounding amounts. Under related, you simply have audit history. So if we go back to the discount list, I can now, since I have my volume discount for Target defined, I can apply that to my price list item. Typically, for the creation of price list items, these are done in bulk, either through integration or through bulk updates via data import. You can get a template for data import from the settings area under data management. Templates for data import, and then I would just choose price list item. Now keep in mind, in order to do a successful data import for price list item, you must have the information handy on all the required fields, as they must match exactly, or you will have difficulties with your data import. So let's create one more price list item on this price list. So I'll hop back to the price list, create a price list item, and let's use my Aubameyang pop from Arsenal, choose my unit, go to my pricing information, and again I can indicate my price. And I've created a new price list item. If I want for this price list to create a territory relationship, I simply, once my territories have been created, simply add a new connection. So for US East, I'm going to say this is the default price list for US East. And now, anytime a salesperson who's associated with the territory US East creates an opportunity for this product, it will derive that the price list should be the Funko price list for Target. So that's the basics on price lists, price list items, and discount lists. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Let us know if you want to see something specific on the next weekly dispatch or any upcoming episode. Also, check out our blog at yourservicepod.com. And also, check out our podcast at crm.audio or your favorite podcast app. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever fantastic podcasts can be found.